Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first Lighthouse for the Blind of the Palm Beaches, Treasure Coast, and Okeechobee's, um, ex- accessibility webinar. We really are delighted to have you here today. I am Lisa Stella, the Executive Director of the Lighthouse for the Blind, and I just wanted to welcome you to today's webinar. But I wanted to tell you the topic that we actually had in mind, we really can't speak in detail about it because the rules have changed. And Alex Oliveira, who is part of my marketing consulting team, is going to share exactly with you what changed. But first, we're going to do introductions. So, Alex, please introduce yourself.
Hey everyone, welcome and good morning. So I'm Alex Oliveira. I'm the founder and CEO of Prediq, and we are a digital marketing agency. We've been around for 16 years, and we've also worked with one of our guests here from accessiBe. We've worked with accessiBe for over 6 years in making sure that websites are compliant. And so I'm happy to be here and be part of the conversation on how we can be more inclusive. Uh, Take it away, Sapir.
Thank you so much, Alex, and great to be here with everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Sapir Yarden. I lead brand and community at accessiBe. My work traverses a lot of different areas, so I'll have a lot of insights to share, but I do see that my colleague Michael has joined, and I actually would love to give him the floor first because I'm not sure how long Michael can stay. So, Michael, I'll hand it over to you briefly.
Hi, I'm Mike Hingson. I'm Chief Vision Officer at accessiBe and do a variety of different kinds of things to help with the products and the projects. I do have only a limited amount of time. It is right now 9:01 my time in California, and I'm going to have to leave at 9:15. I'm scheduled to fly somewhere, so I'm going to have to run away. But anyway, I'm here for a while.
Well, welcome, Michael. And Emmy, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, my name is Emmy Hutton, and I am a volunteer for Lighthouse of Blind for quite some time. And also, I am an advocate and also digital accessibility consultant in technology space.
Great.
Okay, Alex, tell us why we're here.
All right. So we're here because we want accessibility for all, right? And so that's really the goal. And we've been working on that with different stakeholders, being one of them. And so with Title II coming up, which was a ruling from the Department of Justice. So this has been going on for years with the ADA for being compliant, not only with your website, but digital documents and apps and things like that. But they just announced over the weekend, and actually many of the pages where they had updates are now 404 errors. But the DOJ just extended the compliance deadline. So organizations that are larger than 50,000 people, the new deadline, which they're calling an interim final rule, will now be April 26, 2027 instead of April 2026. And then for organizations that are smaller than 50,000, the new deadline will be April 26, 2028. What's important to know is that the extension is already in effect. It's not a proposal, right? And it's going to be a 60-day public comment period open through June 22nd of 2026. So super important. The law has not been repealed. So for any of you who have played a role in compliance, you know that this has been ongoing for many, many years, especially as it pertains to websites. So again, this is just an extension, and I want to share a document here just so that you all know what we're looking at. Let's see here. And I'm going to share these links with you. So the first link I'll share with you, I'll put it into the chat. Okay. And yes, if you guys, all attendees, if you want to put in the chat where you're from, your organization, feel free to do that as well. So what I'm sharing with you here is the document that they just shared this morning, the Justice Department. It's a very lengthy document, and you can read after the webinar. You'll have the link. We'll send it to you again. But it explains why they've made this ruling. Basically, they're not prepared, and there is what they feel like as you go down all the way to Section 5. It explains that there is a cost saving analysis that they've done, and it would impact especially higher education and many government organizations in a very negative way. There would be just a flood of lawsuits because most are not ready. So that's really what this comes down to. And then what I'm also going to do is give you this link. This is the link to the comment period. So if you search their document here, RIN 1190-AA82, which is the actual document that they recommend. Let's see, let me get up to over here. You'll see the number of the document here. So you can call. I did call to speak to this gentleman here, left a message. We'll fill you in because this webinar series will be ongoing as we discover all the developments. But the actual document number, when you put that in, it's so fresh, the information, that it's actually not coming up. But once this is up, which I'm assuming it'll be up in the next 24 to 48 hours, you'll be able to add your comments. And then based on those comments, the Justice Department is going to make the changes so that by 2027, companies, organizations, nonprofits are prepared to make the changes. But again, the law is still in place. Nothing has really changed yet. So if you're not compliant, definitely this is a good time to think about being compliant. And with that, I probably want to share the stage with Sapir now, so Sapir can talk a little bit about how you can get even a basic audit to understand if your website is accessible, right?
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Alex. So what you're bringing up is actually very interesting because we did a research at accessiBe with 300 public sector leaders, all of whom would be impacted by the ADA Title II deadline. And our research found that only 14% of those who responded were actually prepared and ready to stand behind their efforts in accessibility. So what that tells us is not only was there such a small minority of people who have really done the work on accessibility, but that we're actually willing to stand behind it. So in a way, we could see that the market, the industry, the businesses were not ready. And ADA Title II isn't solely for public sector or local government. It's also for the organizations that are receiving funding from them. So this does have a very big trickle-down effect. And what we're fearing will happen is that people will see, oh, I have another year to complete my accessibility efforts. I'm going to take another year to complete my accessibility efforts. And that's actually the completely wrong effort. They just have more time now to actually get things done right. So my first recommendation, my first step would be actually review the accessibility of your website. Or even before that, identify who should be responsible for this. If it's you who's on the call today, you can go ahead already and start scanning your website. There's plenty of free solutions out there. accessiBe has one called AccessScan. I'll put the link in there in a moment, but we also do recommend Wave and Google Lighthouse, and those will help you identify where the biggest risk areas are, so you can start building out your plans on how to actually create a plan that you can stand behind come April 2027.
If I can add to that, I think it's extremely important that people realize that even if the extension continues, there's a lot of opposition to that extension, by the way, because people have already had a considerable amount of time, over 34 years, to make websites accessible and haven't done it. And it's not clear how much will happen over the next year. Maybe there will be enough of an impetus because this is becoming visible, or maybe there'll be enough opposition that they will withdraw the extension. However, either way it goes, the bottom line is working to make your website and do all of that now is extremely important. Don't wait. Sapir is right. Alex, you're correct. The time to do it is now. And companies like accessiBe have a lot of different technologies to help you make your website accessible and to make that happen sooner rather than later. And there's really no excuse for waiting. Magically, it's not to make the website accessible. The process is relatively straightforward. It may require a little bit of education if you are using a website coder that doesn't know anything about accessibility, but that's what we're here to help with. So I really encourage everyone also to do what you can to get your website accessible now. Don't wait. It's a whole lot better to do it now than later.
And Michael, this is Lisa from the Lighthouse. Can you please share your role with accessiBe with the audience so this way they know exactly what you've been able to do to help them achieve accessibility?
So as Chief Vision Officer for accessiBe, one of the things that I've done is worked with a number of companies as they're working to make their website accessible, helping to educate them, helping to show them the different kinds of technologies that are available, but also just educating people who may not know about them, screen readers and other kinds of technologies. So my job is to really help not only an attitude adjustment about this, but to show that the reality is it's not overly complicated to do.
And Michael, you've been a screen reader user since when?
Oh, since JAWS was first developed back in the early 1990s. And before then, I used other technologies that kind of worked. I go all the way back to a device called an Echo, which was a box that would attach via an RS-232 serial cable. Nobody knows about RS-232 today. And then you also had to have some software to drive it. And that goes back to the mid 1980s. So I've been doing this a while, and I go back with technology long before then because I helped Ray Kurzweil in developing the original Kurzweil reading machine for the blind.
And then Lisa, could I add to like both those two that, I also been working in AI in the software spaces. And then a lot of times that I'm working as a product manager or a PMO where accessibility portions not really considered a part of like the roadmaps on their delivery and stuff. So, it is a really great time to really start thinking about embedded in this accessibility from the beginning, and it's not too late. You can certainly do the incremental agile way to deliver those accessibility updates into their platform, to their websites, to their apps and so forth.
And I'm going to have to run away. So I just put my email address in the chat. It's michaelhi@accessiBe.com. I'm glad to help in any way that I can. Anyone is welcome to reach out or do it through Sapir, whichever you choose.
Thank you so
Michael.
much,
Thank you,
Michael, for
Michael.
being here.
You all take
Appreciate it.
care.
You too. Okay. All right. So what we wanted to do is open it up for questions. I know many of you have questions about your own organization, not only about the website, but also documents. And that's what we're here to do, answer the questions that we can answer. And the ones that we can't, obviously, we can find out the right answer and go back to you and invite you to a later webinar and just continuously, give you guys the voice and understanding of what works, what doesn't. So my own experience, just to give you guys an idea, I've been building websites and marketing strategies for over 16 years. And as I was sharing with Lisa before the webinar, I've sat at many meetings with CMOs and large organizations where you try to get them to understand that this is important because 1 in 5 people have a differing ability, and they don't want to listen to this. I spoke to you about this as well, Emmy, over the weekend, where maybe you have someone who is in charge of diversity, which these days is a bad word for certain organizations, and but it has to be part of the conversation. And when I do the marketing and I explain that things have to be responsive because there's an audience out there that wants to consume your product, they want to do it the right way. Some people listen, but most don't. And so if you're a leader in an organization here today, you have to take action on how you can best serve the end user and all users, not just one segment of the population. So you're welcome to chime in, Emmy, and
Yeah, absolutely. Great, Alex. I think it's a really great point. And with my experience, and then of course I do have visual impairment as well. And one of those organizations I worked for, I get pushback from like C-levels. For example, like CFOs and CEOs. Oftentimes, we don't have budget for this, or we don't have resource for this. Maybe like a next sprint from like maybe VP of product. So how do you tackle that? How do you approach that? There are some ways that you can actually, let them know that, what, this is not all about just checking the compliance. It's about doing things right and also embedded it right. And then also at the results of that, you can actually increase the user base as well as increase your revenue potentially. I mean, there's a lot of people out there with a disability. It's not just a visual impaired, there are disabilities spectrum. So there's a lot of people that be able to leverage, accessibility. Then, you know what? That's win-win. You also avoid your lawsuits and increase the revenue. So hopefully that will be, win-win for your organizations and stuff.
There was a stat from a few years ago, and I don't know how accurate it is or I don't recall exactly where it came from, but it came up in my mind just now from this conversation, which is for every dollar spent on accessibility efforts, there was a $100 ROI or return on investment on that expense. And I'm not sure about the numbers, but I'm sure about the impact, which means if you're investing in reducing risk for your website because you're already doing all of the things to make it compliant, and making sure that everyone has a good, positive, usable experience on your website, you're ultimately making money not just by conversion, but also by brand trust. Because, Emmy, this might be an actually good question for you. In my experience, the disability community is very brand loyal. When you find a website that works, you'll go back to it. When you find a website or an experience that doesn't work for you or your particular needs, you probably won't do it again. And you'll also tell your community, your family, your friends about that.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a really tight community. So not even just like, nowadays like TikTok or YouTube or any like the brand reputation, but it's also word of mouth. It's a really huge part of that disability community. So it is really, once your negative sentiment gets in, it is so hard for organizations to recoup that a positive sentiment. So, Stuart, I'm totally, with you. And I think it's right now there's almost like a 1.3 billion, 1.3 billion people who might have some sort of disability in worldwide. And there's a $1.9 trillion of disposable income potentially, have for gain on your business worldwide. So that's a huge number. And then like Alex says, 1 in 6 people have a disability. You may not have it right now, but in the future, you part of that, right? So that's a huge number of disability community members increasing.
Mm-hmm. I think until it gets to somewhere in your vicinity and your closeness or your circle of, oh, I see how an inaccessible experience impacts someone, it's out of mind, out of sight. So you're not willing to make the move on it. You're not willing to invest the money on it because you're not familiar with that impact. And when I started at accessiBe a few years ago, I was actually on several sales calls where I heard people say, well, I don't have blind people shopping on my website. And I said, really? How do you know that? And then they completely stutter because they have no idea who the shoppers are and what types of experiences they might need adjusted for. And that was sort of the impetus for creating a solution that allows users to customize the experience for their particular need. So when you have more options and more usability, you're going to end up in a better place. And to the point of compliance and ADA Title II, the longer you wait on creating those experiences, the further behind you're going to be.
Sapir, if you can speak to any case that there's so many in the headlines going back to years with Winn-Dixie supermarkets being sued. There's the legal side, which are the attorneys who are going after the ones who are breaking the rules, so to speak. Because I think that sometimes when it's for doing good, there's one way of thinking. When it comes from a fear and mitigation of the risk, that's another angle as well. So could you speak to the number of lawsuits that you guys see coming through the pipeline and how having accessibility eliminates those challenges?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's upsetting to see the number of lawsuits increasing as well as to see the number of accessibility barriers still out there. over the years, the number has gone up, I believe, about 70%. So most recently in 2025, there were over 5,000 ADA compliance lawsuits. And that's just specifically for the ADA. Different countries, I know that in the chat, there was also a comment about the EAA, which is the European Accessibility Act. In the UK, there's also a directive for accessibility. Canada has its own laws. And within the United States, we also have state-specific laws. So you don't even need to be in that specific state. For example, New York and California, those are the states where most of the lawsuits are happening, but your business doesn't need to be located in New York or California to receive a lawsuit. It's if the person trying to shop on that website is there and they can't access it. So we're seeing this large number of lawsuits and demand letters over the years. And one thing that I think is really important that most people aren't thinking about is, well, if I already took steps on accessibility, if I have a plan that I'm working towards, you don't have to be perfect on day one. You have to start. So if you have a plan and you're building towards it and you can show the concrete efforts that you're making over time, you're going to be in a much better position to hopefully not get the lawsuit. Unfortunately, in the US, anyone can sue anyone. So that's a little bit problematic. But you have the sort of, I don't want to call it ammunition, but the evidence to show, hey, we're actually taking this seriously. So long as you're not taking it seriously, you're not really in a position to say, well, I shouldn't be sued, because you actually have been negligent towards a community of people who are interested in making a website accessible. So I see also the comment here, progress over perfection. That's one of our values at accessiBe, and it's really important to us that even if you're just starting at the beginning, doing one action a day, taking one step, having conversations with community members, people with disabilities, whether that's about their experience or also user testing specific journeys with them on the website, will help you understand what you can do to continuously improve on that. And accessibility, if I could just add one more thing, Lisa, it's not a one and done. It's not a project. It's an overall system. So while we have solutions that help address specific pain points and barriers, it's about building up towards something even greater, because ultimately the experience will be better for everyone.
Sapir, my question for you is, I'm sorry, Emmy, is when people want to get started, is there like 3 or 5 steps they can take to just start this journey? So this way they can make sure they're implementing, and just break it down so it makes it easy. And then Emmy, I'm sorry, you can add what you want and Sapir can answer me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, sorry about this, Lisa. So yeah, definitely, I kind of like to piggyback off of this Sphere, and that it is really, I seen like multiple different, most organizations don't know where to start, even like the user UX experts, right? And they know all the design and everything. However, they're not really familiar with the accessibility. How do you make that change? So it's really important to really kind of plan and creating like a, sprint planning, make sure that organization put those accessibility part of their sprint planning to like, what can we accomplish in incremental level, right? There's no way you can do everything in one shot. It's not a one-time deal. It is ongoing process and changing, so.
I love that you called it spring planning. I'm going to steal that from you. That's so good. Yes, under our industry reports page, which I shared before, there's specific checklists for different industries. So there will be one for government offices who are looking to make their websites accessible by the ADA Title II deadline, whenever that might be. There's a checklist also for the healthcare industry, because they have a timeline coming up with Section 504, where the HHS actually has just said, if you're not accessible, we're going to remove your funding. So that affects also Medicare and Medicaid, or any business that's accepting of those. We have the Access Scan, which is the scanning tool that I mentioned before. But really, I think like the day one step is saying, okay, who owns this? Who's the first person who's going to get started on this? Because it's really tricky when you expect someone else to own a different part. And we see also, and to Emmy's point, accessibility isn't just owned by, the one person who manages the website and the one person who's responsible for IT systems. It's also part of the procurement process. If you're working at a government office or also a vendor looking to get hired for a contract. It's owned by social media and marketing, and basically everyone has a part to take in it. So it's when you identify who's responsible for what and start building out, like, this is the one thing I'm going to get started on today, that helps you move a little bit further.
A question that I have for you, Sapir, is, it's a little controversial, but I'm going to hit you with it anyways, because a lot of people ask me, and I spoke about it with Emmy and Lisa as well, which is there are certain software companies out there that create these overlays or plugins and skins that do not function properly. And to their defense, often people are using the free version, not the paid version. So there's a lot of that. Obviously, you have people's technologies. Are they even on a 5G device that's updated? So there's a lot of variables. But talk to us about that charge that you have from many in different circles who say the overlay or the plugin is not going to help for everyone, and it's actually maybe going to get in the way. Can you speak to that and how much truth there is to that?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question also, because it's a really important question. And I think it's something that guides the accessibility space and the digital accessibility space for a long time now. So when it comes to accessibility, yes, there are overlays that exist, and Access Widget is what we like to think of as a separate category to that. The reason being that it has the same offerings as the UI adjustments, where you can increase the font size and change the spacing and the color contrast, which are all elements that Web AIM has called as important issues for web accessibility. But what our solution has that other, let's call them overlay companies or technologies, don't have is the AI backend that offers screen reader optimization and keyboard navigation. So if you're a user who's navigating a website with any sort of assistive technology, the AI will recognize that as you come onto the website. It will audibly direct you on how to use the technology, meaning how you can navigate, and help fill in any gaps. Because as Michael said before, there's a lot of accessibility, or there's a lot of developers out there who don't know accessibility basics. And actually our department of R&D, I'll ask them, like, how much have you learned about accessibility in your degree before you started working in this space? And most developers I've ever met say, oh, it was a one-day thing. We're never going to get very far if it's not integrated into part of the curriculum for all developers or engineers who are working on the coding of the website. And today we have AI tools that actually help us make a lot more progress at a faster pace. But the Access Widget really is the sort of the starting point for your accessibility journey. It helps cover a lot of the areas that people might not be familiar with, and helps them make sure that they have that sort of coverage. So if we're thinking about, even myself, I can speak to my experience working at a nonprofit before I worked at accessiBe. I was tasked with updating the website on a frequent basis. And I was using a drag and drop type website where you would put different headers and footers all over the place. All of my buttons were a light blue with a white font that said, click here. No explanation of where people were clicking. And I saw that I had the option to add alt text. And sometimes I did and sometimes I didn't, but I can't say that I actually knew what alt text even meant at the time. So absolutely baffling. It was especially baffling when I came to accessiBe and learned all of these things. And I said, oh my God, I built the least accessible website of all time. And I've been on a journey to educate people about this ever since. But for those who don't add alt text, for those who need support to build in keyboard navigation, to make sure that they have the tools available for people to make those adjustments, that's what Access Widget is for. We have other solutions that help developers actually learn accessibility and make those implementations into the source code automatically so that they can move faster, ship solutions faster, and just have accessible experiences from day one. So whenever I'm speaking to a customer who says, oh, we're doing a website rebrand, we want to move our Access Widget license from one website to another, I say, well, why don't you use Access Flow and make sure that that website is accessible from the beginning? Then you can add the widget on top of that. And for anyone who still wants to make those customizations, whether it's because they have a neurodivergent need or a request to modify the website, they'll have that availability to them. And then, of course, there's other elements of like documents on websites that are almost never accessible, but that's a whole other conversation we can get into.
Great. Joan, if you could unmute, and I think Joan's story, because this whole thing is happening because, Joan had an experience with her son, right? At his college. Could you unmute yourself and tell us that story?
So I went to dinner with my son 2 weeks ago on a Friday night. My son is an environmental engineer and works for the county of St. Lucie. And he's telling me about these problems that he's having because the websites of the government are not putting on information of testing, of different permitting, and all the other things. And he has to go to all these other sources. And I go, why is that happening? He goes, because of the ADA compliance, and people don't want to take the responsibility for doing it incorrectly. So they're not putting the information up on their websites, which is really public information, but because it doesn't have the compliancy, he has to go through all these other sources. And so he knows I work at Lighthouse for the Blind, and he goes, it's all those people who don't see, it's my problem now. And I'm like, hold on. I go, this could be fixed. I come home, I'm like, this is ridiculous. I have to find a solution. I know that we have incredible software that supports visually impaired and blind individuals, and I don't see why we can't do something to help this. Well, then all of a sudden I'm on a chat, Gemini, and it starts coming up with all kinds of, this is happening on April 24th, and people need to be in compliance. And, you work for Lighthouse for the Blind, you got to make sure that you're in compliance. And then I start talking, well, how do I grow this? How do I make it very important to other people and to my organization? If I'm going to take this on, how do we lead? And so then spoke to Lisa, and Lisa goes, let's talk to the experts, which was Alex and a few other people that I sent the email to. I put in all the ADA dates and things like that. And I said, let's solve this, because this is for our community. And we need to really determine how we can best serve our clients that we're serving, but also the people that are our partners in everything. I mean, these are the people that we do business with. These are the people that benefit from working with the Lighthouse. This could be an extraordinarily positive benefit coming on, and we're working collaboratively together. So, of course, being the development director, that's where my brain goes as well. And but it all got started from a conversation with my son, who says it takes him so much time because of the people not loading the information because of compliancy. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. And I start looking into it, and now I understand why, because of all the lawsuits that are happening. And that seems to be, like, I think, Sapir, you said it was like up 70% in the last year, the lawsuits that were happening.
70%, I believe, over the past 5 years, but
Okay.
in the last year it was over 5,000.
Yeah, I did see that as well. So that's how it got started. And then Alex and his team really, they just like moved the ball so quickly. And I am just happy to learn how we can do this for our community, and also for the partners that we have now, and how we continue to hopefully leverage that and build more partnerships to show how important it is to work with the Lighthouse of the Palm Beaches Treasure Coast in Okeechobee.
Any questions? Does anybody have any questions so far? Obviously, Sapir has provided some links. You guys have been engaged, and giving feedback here, which is wonderful. So again, this will be the first of many as we research and talk to different experts in the field. We're going to invite Sapir and Emmy back, and I think it's so important. We've talked about this from the beginning too, is to have give a voice to the community and bring those people here as well. So hopefully we can continue to grow this so that it benefits the community, right, Lisa?
Yes, and again, Sapir, the link that you put in the chat to get started, that's so people can actually look at their website and see what compliant they are. So that's a good first step, and then try to divide and conquer and see who's going to take responsibility for each component.
Exactly. And it tells you also which, for each area of your website that might not be accessible, it'll also tell you what community that impacts and how. So that's something that I think also resonates really strongly. And I'll use this as like a closing statement is we think about, oh, keyboard navigation sounds like such a complicated and heavy thing. But if I can't use my keyboard or whatever technology I want to actually complete a purchase on a website, that website is essentially useless to me. And I'm thinking more like on the e-commerce side, right? But if I'm thinking also about actual services that I might need from the government, whether that's benefits and care, housing, access to different policies, completing forms, all of that relates back to web accessibility. And so this scanning tool is a great first step, and you can identify the areas of your website. It's also worth having a conversation with other department heads or anyone who you work with about what you can do to be more accessible. And one thing that I didn't mention before, but to answer also your question, Alex, about the feedback that we've received about overlay technology and accessiBe, my favorite thing that I've done at work is I created an advisory board that's based off of community feedback. So we have different leaders from organizations and communities coming to us and giving us feedback about how our products work, about the product roadmap that we have ahead. And that was actually the meeting I was on just before this one, was testing out some new solutions. So if anyone here is interested, I'll also add in my email address. Feel free to reach out to me anytime to continue the conversation. I'm more than happy to be a resource or just a sounding board for your accessibility efforts.
Perfect. And Emmy, if you want to give a closing statement as well, we're going to share other webinars that accessiBe is doing, but that Emmy is involved in as well, and the contact information. So the idea is to host all of these resources on the Lighthouse's website, right? And so just continue to bring outside voices who care about this topic. So go ahead, Emmy.
Yeah, for the closing, yes. I do kind of agree with us here as well that I've done also creating an accessibility council within organizations to really also, not only internal team, like engineers and the product managers and PMOs, but also like, external clients and stuff like that as well to kind of advocate what needed to be done that helps learning curve for all those team members as well. And there are some tactics how to do that with my experience. And I'm also living like a gray area of I'm not sighted enough and I'm not blind enough, and then which is also kind of different than somebody who is completely blind just using braille or screen reader and so forth. So I do encourage people to do. There are free tools which she mentioned, and then you can get that started. Then if you really need to purchase the enterprise level to extend your accessibility, please do so. And I'm also feel here to help anyone who's wanted to know how to get that started. I'd be more than happy to help that as well.
Perfect. Well, we'll close today's webinar just saying thank you for being here today, and we will share the recording with you, and I'll just hand it off to Lisa.
Again, everyone, thank you for joining us today. And remember, this is the first step, and many of us support blind communities or other nonprofits in this space. It's about all of us. It's about being able to enjoy content with whatever device or whatever you use in order to be able to fill out a job application, in order to be able to file for benefits, in order to be able to order a pizza. It's just all those things are just so important. And I want to share this too, because I shared this with Alex previously. Just having a phone number available so this way somebody can call somebody for help is not accessibility. And I learned that through one of Sapir's webinars. So you're not accessible if you have a phone number listed for somebody to talk to. You really have to have the tools there so this way they can do what they need to do to enjoy the content that you're providing.